I ruined the life of the man who betrayed me, and I didn't even plan to do it at first. It started very quietly, in a way that most people would probably miss, like just another normal part of my routine. I used to work in a small office in the city, nothing fancy, just a place where everyone knows everyone's habits, who drinks too much coffee, who stays late, who pretends to be busy when they're not. And there was him, the person I trusted the most there, the one I thought was actually different from the usual fake smiles and office politics. His name was Daniel. He was calm, always polite, always the kind of person who listens more than he talks, and that made people trust him easily, including me. I was going through a rough time back then, dealing with pressure at work and some personal stuff I don't really want to get into, and he became the person I leaned on without even realizing it. We had lunch together, we talked after work sometimes, and slowly I started believing he was one of the few honest people in that place. But the truth is, I was completely wrong about him. I found out about the betrayal in the most ordinary way possible. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation or a confession, it was just a mistake, a screen left open when he stepped away from his desk. I remember standing there holding a folder, waiting for him, and I saw messages that I was never supposed to see. At first I didn't even understand what I was reading, because it didn't match the person I thought I knew. But then it clicked, line by line, that he had been feeding information about me and a few others to someone outside the company, someone who had a direct interest in making us look bad. And what hurt the most wasn't even the professional part of it, it was the personal tone in those messages, like he was discussing my weaknesses the same way someone would talk about a product, not a human being. I didn't say anything that day. I just closed everything, put the folder down, and walked out like nothing happened. But inside, something shifted completely. It wasn't anger at first, it was more like disbelief, like my brain was trying to reject what I had just seen. I kept telling myself maybe I misunderstood, maybe there was another explanation, but deep down I already knew there wasn't. That night I didn't sleep. I just kept replaying everything in my head, every conversation, every moment I trusted him, every time I defended him when others said he was too quiet or too perfect to be real. And suddenly all those small memories started to feel like part of something bigger that I had completely missed. The next morning I went to work like usual, and that's when I noticed something else. He acted completely normal with me. Like nothing had changed. Like I was still the same person he could smile at and talk to casually by the coffee machine. And that's when I realized something I didn't want to admit at first, that he didn't just betray me once, he had probably been doing it carefully, for a long time, while looking me in the eye every single day. And I remember standing there, holding my coffee, thinking one very simple thing that I couldn't shake off no matter how hard I tried. He thinks I don't know. That thought just kept repeating in my head the whole day, and I remember trying to act normal, answering emails, joining meetings, even laughing at something someone said in the kitchen, but inside I was completely focused on him, watching every move like I was seeing a different person now. And the strange part is, I didn't feel ready to explode or confront him. It was more like I needed to understand how far it went first, because something about the way he acted didn't match a simple "he made a mistake" situation. It felt planned. Structured. Like there was a system behind it. So I started paying attention. Not in a dramatic way, just small things. I noticed when he stepped out, his screen was always unlocked for a few seconds longer than normal. I noticed he took calls near the stairwell instead of his desk. I noticed he never sent certain emails from the office network, only from his phone. And the more I watched, the clearer it became that what I saw that first time wasn't an accident. It was part of a pattern. I didn't tell anyone at first, because I needed proof that wasn't just emotions or suspicion. So I stayed late one evening when most people had left, and I used that time to quietly check the shared files we both had access to. I wasn't doing anything illegal or hacking anything, it was all within my permissions, just folders I normally wouldn't open. That's when I found it. There were duplicated reports, versions of documents that had been altered slightly before being sent outside. Not enough to be obvious at first glance, but enough to change how certain people in the company would be judged. And attached to those files were timestamps and small notes that clearly connected back to him. And suddenly everything made sense. He wasn't just betraying me personally. He was feeding selective internal information to a competitor, slowly shaping how our team would look from the outside, making certain people, including me, seem incompetent or unreliable. And I realized something even worse. I wasn't the only target, but I was one of the easiest ones for him to manipulate because he knew I trusted him. I remember sitting there in the empty office, staring at the screen, and for a moment I didn't even feel angry. I just felt tired. Like I had been living in a version of reality that someone else had been quietly editing without me noticing. That's when I made a decision. Not revenge in the emotional sense, not something impulsive, but something very controlled. I decided I wasn't going to confront him directly, because if I did, he would deny it, twist it, maybe even erase more evidence before anyone could act. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every file, every timestamp, every pattern of access. I saved it all in a separate secure folder, and I started building a timeline. Quietly. Carefully. Over several days. And during that time, I kept acting normal with him. I still answered his "how are you" in the same tone, still sat near him in meetings, still pretended nothing had changed. And honestly, that part was harder than anything else, because every time he smiled at me, I could feel how fake it was now. When I had enough evidence, I didn't go to him. I went to our internal compliance department first, and I also escalated it to an external contact that was already listed in our company's policy for confidential reporting. I didn't want this handled quietly or internally buried. After that, things moved fast. Too fast. Within 2 days, there was a full internal investigation. His access was suspended. His accounts were frozen. And suddenly the same person who used to walk through the office like he owned the space was being called into meetings he couldn't control anymore. But the most intense moment was the day they asked me to be present for clarification. I didn't want to, but I had to. I remember sitting in a small glass room with 2 investigators, and Daniel was brought in separately. He looked completely different that day. Not confident, not calm, just confused at first, and then slowly defensive when they started showing him the evidence. He tried to explain it at first. Said it was misinterpretation. Said someone else could have had access. But then they showed him the access logs, the timestamps, the consistent pattern that only made sense if it was intentional. And for the first time, I saw him lose control of his own image. He looked at me once during that meeting. Just once. And I think that's when he realized I wasn't just a passive part of his story anymore. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. After that, everything collapsed quickly for him. His contract was terminated. The external client relationship he was feeding information to was cut off immediately once the company confirmed what had happened. And there were legal consequences too, because it wasn't just workplace misconduct, it crossed into data misuse. But what ruined his life, as people later said, wasn't just losing his job. It was how fast his entire structure disappeared once the truth was exposed. The reputation he built as the quiet, reliable employee turned into the exact opposite in official records. And in a small professional circle like ours, that kind of label follows you. A week later, I saw him outside the building when I was leaving work. He wasn't supposed to be there, he had already been cleared out, but he was standing near the side entrance, holding a small box, the kind people carry when they've lost everything in one place. He saw me before I could avoid it. And for a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he finally spoke, quietly, like he didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. "You didn't have to go that far." I remember I looked at him for a second, really looked at him, not the version I used to trust, but the real person behind it all. And I just said, very calmly, "You went farther first." He didn't respond to that. He just nodded once, like he understood there was nothing left to argue about, and then he looked away. I turned to leave, but before I walked off completely, I heard him say something again, almost under his breath. "I thought you'd never notice." I stopped for half a second, not turning back, and I said the last thing I needed to say. I did. Just later than you needed. And then I kept walking, and I didn't look back again.